The alarm screamed through the cold metal halls of Frontier Station Delta 7. Taman dropped his coffee and ran to the observation deck. His boots made loud sounds on the floor as he rushed past other workers who looked just as confused as he felt. "What's happening?" someone shouted. "Debris field," another voice answered. "Something came through the jump gate." Taman pressed his face against the thick window. Out in the darkness of space, small pieces of metal floated past the station. Then he saw it. A small escape pod, spinning slowly, its lights flickering on and off like a dying heartbeat. "Is anyone going to get that?" Taman asked the station controller. The controller, an older man named Sung Ho, shook his head. "Protocol says we report it and wait. Could be dangerous, could be a trap. Or it could be someone dying out there," Taman said. Sung Ho gave him a long look. "Don't do anything stupid." But Taman was already moving. He was an engineer, not a hero. But something in his chest told him to act. 20 minutes later, he was in a small rescue suit, floating through space toward the pod. His hands shook inside the thick gloves. He had done repairs outside the station before, but never something like this. The pod was damaged badly. Burn. Marks covered one side and a crack ran across the window. Taman pulled himself to the door and forced it open. The inside was dark and cold. Very cold. His helmet light cut through the darkness and landed on a small figure. It was a child. At least it looked like a child. She was tiny, maybe the size of a 6-year-old human girl, but her skin shimmered with strange colors. Parts of her body looked almost like crystal or glass. Her eyes were closed and she wasn't moving. "Oh no," Taman whispered. He checked for a pulse but didn't know where to check on this alien body. Her skin felt cold and hard like stone. "Please don't be dead, please." He wrapped her in his emergency blanket and pulled her carefully into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. The trip back to the station felt like it took forever. His mind raced with questions. What was she? Where did she come from? And most importantly, was she still alive? Taman didn't take her to the medical bay. If he did, they would follow protocol. They would quarantine her, study her, maybe even send her away before helping her. Instead, he took her to his small quarters in the engineering section. It was against every rule, but he didn't care. For 3 days, he barely slept. He researched everything he could find about alien biology. The girl's species was called Valori, and there wasn't much information about them. They were rare, almost extinct. Their bodies were part organic and part crystalline. They needed certain minerals and frequencies of light to survive. Taman created a makeshift medical area in his room. He used growing lights from the station's garden, mineral supplements from the water system, and a lot of guesswork. Sung Ho discovered what he was doing on the second day but didn't report him. Instead, the older man brought supplies and stood guard. "You're risking everything for this," Sung Ho said quietly. "I know," Taman replied, adjusting the lights around the small alien girl. "But I can't just let her die." On the 4th day, her eyes opened. They were large and violet like 2 perfect gemstones. She looked at Taman without fear, just curiosity. He smiled at her, and slowly, carefully, she smiled back. "Hello," Taman said softly. "I'm Taman. You're safe now." She didn't speak at first. For a week, she just watched him. Taman brought her food, though he wasn't sure what she could eat. She seemed to absorb nutrients through her skin when he placed her hands in bowls of mineral water. He played music for her, old songs from Earth. He showed her pictures of his home planet. Slowly, she started to trust him. She began to make sounds, trying to copy his words. Her voice was like wind chimes, musical and light. "Tae-min," she said one day, and his heart nearly burst with joy. "Yes, that's me. What's your name?" "Lidore," she managed. "Leora," he repeated. "That's beautiful." Over the next 2 weeks, Leora grew stronger. She learned more words and started to walk around his quarters. She was curious about everything. She touched his books, his tools, his clothes. She laughed at his jokes even when she didn't fully understand them. The sound of her laughter was like music. Taemin learned that she had been traveling with her family when their ship was attacked. The escape pod was all she could reach. She didn't know if anyone else survived. When she talked about it, her crystalline skin would dim, losing its shine. Taemin would hold her small hand and tell her stories to make her feel better. But their time together couldn't last forever. The Valori embassy finally responded to the station's reports. They were sending a ship to collect her. Leora would leave in 2 days. On her last night, Leora performed a strange ritual. She held out her hand, and a small crystal grew from her palm. It broke off without hurting her, and she offered it to Taemin. "For you," she said in her careful accented speech. "You saved Leora. You are a good person." Taemin took the crystal. It was warm and seemed to glow with its own light. "Thank you, little star. I'll keep it always." The next morning, Leora stood in Taemin's quarters wearing new clothes the embassy had sent. She looked sad. Taemin knelt down to her level. "I'll miss you," he said. "But you'll be with your people now. They'll take care of you." Leora looked at him with those big violet eyes. "When Leora grows up," she said seriously, "Leora will marry Taemin." He laughed. It was so sweet and innocent. "Okay," he said, playing along. He took her small hands in his. "Then I'll wait for you, little star." She smiled, bright and happy. Then she did something strange. She touched her forehead to his and hummed a soft note. Light seemed to pass between them for just a moment. The embassy ship arrived an hour later. Leora left with the Valori diplomats, turning back one last time to wave at Taemin. He waved back, smiling even though his chest felt tight. Sung-ho stood beside him. "You did a good thing," the older man said. "I hope she has a good life," Taemin replied. He went back to his quarters and looked at the small crystal she had given him. He put it in a safe place, in a small box by his bed. He would keep it just as he promised. Taemin had no idea that in Valori culture, accepting a crystal gift and speaking words of waiting meant something very specific. He had no idea that he had just agreed to a binding promise. And he had no idea that the little girl would never forget him. The years would pass and Taemin would move on with his life. But some promises, even ones made without knowing, have a way of coming back. 15 years changed everything and nothing at all. Taemin stood in his office on Earth looking out at the city of Seoul below. Glass towers reached toward the sky, and flying vehicles moved between them like schools of fish. He was 43 now, with gray starting to show in his hair. The young engineer from the frontier station was gone, replaced by Dr. Taemin, one of the most respected xenobiologists in human space. It had all started with Leora, though most people didn't know that. After saving her, Taemin had become obsessed with understanding alien biology. How could different species survive? What did they need? How could humans help them? His improvised techniques for treating Leora had worked, and he wanted to know why. He had written papers, given lectures, and eventually opened this research facility. The building behind him held laboratories where humans and aliens worked together to solve medical mysteries. They had saved countless lives and made breakthroughs that changed how species understood each other. Taemin should have been happy. He was successful, respected, and wealthy. But something felt missing. He dated occasionally, but nothing ever lasted. His friends joked that he was married to his work. Maybe they were right. He barely remembered the little alien girl anymore. Sometimes late at night he would think of her and wonder if she was okay. He still had the crystal she gave him, tucked away in a drawer at home. He wasn't sure why he kept it, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. What Taemin didn't know was that across the galaxy, Leora remembered everything. On the crystal world of Valora, Leora stood in the royal training hall. She moved through combat forms with perfect grace, her crystalline body catching the light with every motion. She was 21 years old now, though she looked like a human woman in her early 20s. She was tall and beautiful, with skin that shimmered like diamonds and those same violet eyes. But she was different from other Valori. She was more determined, more focused, and more stubborn. The teachers said she got it from spending time with humans, Again, her combat instructor said, "You must be faster." Leora moved through the forms again, pushing herself harder. She had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. 15 years of training, studying, and learning everything she could about humans and their culture. She learned to speak human languages perfectly without an accent. She studied Earth history, literature, and art. She learned to cook Korean food by watching hundreds of videos. She practiced human martial arts until she could defeat masters. She did all of this for one reason: Taemin. The other Valori thought she was crazy. Humans lived such short lives, barely 100 years. They were fragile and weak compared to the Valori. Why would a princess, one of the last of their kind, want to bind herself to a human? But Leora knew something they didn't. She had seen the best of humanity in Taemin. When she was dying, scared and alone, he had risked everything to save her. He didn't know her. She couldn't offer him anything. But he saved her anyway, because it was the right thing to do. That kindness had changed her life. It gave her hope when her species was dying out. It showed her that the universe could still be good, and she loved him for it. The Valori Council had tried to talk her out of it many times. They sat in their crystal chambers, old and wise, and told her about duty and tradition. "You made a child's promise," the eldest council member said. "Surely the human doesn't even remember." "He accepted my crystal," Leora replied calmly. "He spoke the words of waiting. In our law, that is binding. The human didn't know our law, but I did. And I know it now. The pact stands." The council members looked at each other with worry. Valori law was absolute. A betrothal pact, once made with crystal and words, could not be broken except by both people agreeing. Leora would never agree, and they suspected the human would not understand enough to properly refuse. "He may reject you," another council member warned. "Humans do not honor promises the same way we do." Leora smiled. "Then I will make him want to keep it." She spent the last year before her return learning everything about Taemin specifically. She read all his research papers. She watched his lectures. She learned about his work, his habits, his friends. She discovered that he lived alone, that he worked too much, and that he seemed to be searching for something he couldn't name. On the day before she left for Earth, Leora stood in her chambers looking at a hologram of Taemin. It was taken from one of his recent lectures. He was older now, with lines around his eyes and gray in his hair. But his smile was the same. Kind and warm. "I'm coming for you," she whispered to the image. "I hope you're ready." Her attendant, an older Valori woman named Kira, entered the room. "Princess, the ship is prepared. Are you certain about this?" "I have never been more certain of anything," Leora said. "And if he refuses you?" Leora turned to face her. "He won't. Not once he understands. Not once he sees who I have become." "You sound very confident." "I am patient," Leora corrected. "I have waited 15 years. I can court him properly. I can show him that we belong together." Kira sighed. "You have your mother's determination." Leora's expression softened. Her mother had died in the attack that sent her into that escape pod. Her father had died years before that. She was alone, the last of the royal bloodline. "Mother told me once that love is not about time," Leora said quietly. "It's about choice. Every day you choose the person you love. I chose Taemin 15 years ago. Now I will give him the chance to choose me." The next day, Leora boarded the diplomatic ship to Earth. She wore formal Valori robes that shimmered with every color of the rainbow. Her hair, which was actually crystalline filaments, was arranged in an elaborate style. She looked every bit the princess she was. As the ship jumped through space toward Earth, Leora meditated on what was to come. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Taemin would be surprised, probably confused. He might even be angry. But she was ready. She had studied human courtship. It was so different from Valori customs. Humans valued time together, shared experiences, and emotional connection. They didn't arrange marriages based on bloodlines and duty. They chose based on love. Perfect. Leora could work with that. When the ship finally entered Earth's orbit, Leora stood at the viewing port, looking down at the blue and green planet. Somewhere down there, Taimin was going about his day, completely unaware that his life was about to change. "I'm here," Leora said softly, touching her hand to the glass. "Just as I promised, my Taimin. I've come home to you." The ship descended through the atmosphere toward Seoul. The city sparkled below them, all lights and movement. Leora took a deep breath. She was nervous, she realized. After all this time, after all this preparation, she was actually nervous. But she was also excited. 15 years of waiting were about to end. 15 years of dreaming about this moment. She was finally going to see him again. The little girl who had promised to marry him had grown up. Now it was time to keep that promise. The news spread through Seoul like wildfire. A Valori diplomatic ship had arrived, and they were requesting a meeting with Dr. Taimin. The Valori almost never came to Earth. In fact, most humans had never even seen one in person. Taimin was in the middle of a meeting when his assistant burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Dr. Taimin, you have to see this," she said, pulling up a news feed on the wall screen. The image showed a sleek silver ship landing at the Seoul Diplomatic Center. Reporters crowded around the barriers, cameras flashing. Then the ship's door opened, and she appeared. Taimin's breath caught in his throat. She was stunning. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Her dress shimmered with colors that didn't have names. But it was her eyes that struck him. Those violet eyes. He knew those eyes. "Leora," he whispered, "the little girl from the frontier station." But she wasn't little anymore. 2 hours later, Taimin stood in a private meeting room at his research facility. His hands were sweating. He had no idea why she was here. Maybe she needed medical help. Maybe she wanted to thank him again. Maybe she was here on diplomatic business. The door opened and Leora entered. She was even more beautiful up close. She moved with confidence and grace, but when her eyes met his, he saw something soft there. Something warm. "Taimin," she said, and her voice was like music. "It's good to see you again." "Leora," he managed. You've grown." She smiled. 15 years will do that. "Are you okay? Is something wrong? Do you need help?" "In a way," she said. She moved closer, and Taimin noticed how tall she was. She was nearly his height. "I need you to remember something." "Remember what?" Leora reached into a pocket in her dress and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed softly in her hand. Taimin felt a strange pull in his chest. He knew that crystal. "You gave me a crystal once," she said. "Do you still have it?" Yes. At home. I kept it." Her smile widened. "Good. Do you remember what you said to me that day?" Taimin thought back. It was so long ago. He remembered her small hands in his. He remembered her saying something about marriage. He had thought it was cute. "You said you would marry me when you grew up," he said slowly. "And I said I would wait for you." "Yes," Leora said. "And in my culture, when someone accepts a crystal gift and speaks words of waiting, it creates a betrothal pact." The room suddenly felt very small. "A what?" "A betrothal pact. A promise to marry. It's binding under Valori law." Taimin laughed. He couldn't help it. "Leora, I didn't know. I was just being kind to a child. It was a joke." "Perhaps to you," Leora said calmly. "But not to me. I have spent 15 years preparing to be worthy of you. I have studied your culture, your language, your world. I have trained to be strong enough to stand beside you. I have come to fulfill our pact." "That's impossible," Taimin said, running his hand through his hair. "Leora, you're a princess. You're young and beautiful. You could have anyone. I'm 43 years old. I'm just a doctor. We're different species." "Yes," she agreed. "And none of that matters to me." Before Taimin could respond, his office door opened. Hana, his research partner and old friend, walked in. She stopped when she saw Leora, her eyes widening. "Sorry, I didn't know you had a visitor," Hana said. It's fine, Taimin said. Hana, this is Leora. Leora, this is Dr. Hana, my colleague. Hana had worked with Taimin for 10 years. She was smart, funny, and kind. She had also been in love with him for most of that time, though she never said it out loud. But Taimin knew. Everyone knew. The Valori princess? Hana asked, trying to smile. It's an honor. The honor is mine, Leora said politely. But her eyes stayed on Taimin. The tension in the room was thick. Hana looked between them, sensing something was happening. I should go, she said quietly. After Hana left, Taimin turned back to Leora. You can't seriously expect me to marry you. We barely know each other. That's why I'm here, Leora said. To let you know me. To court you properly, as humans do. Court me? I will not force you, Leora said. I could. Under Valori law, the pact is binding. But I don't want a husband who is forced. I want you to choose me freely. Then release me from this pact. No. Taimin stared at her. No. I will make you an offer instead, Leora said, stepping closer. Give me 1 Earth year. Let me court you. Let me show you who I am and why we could be good together. If at the end of that year you truly don't want me, I will release you from the pact myself. But you must give me this chance. And if I refuse, then I will take the matter to both our governments, Leora said simply. The pact is legal under Valori law and recognized by the Interspecies Treaty. It would become a diplomatic incident. Your government would pressure you to comply to maintain good relations with my people. Taimin felt trapped. So I don't really have a choice. You have every choice, Leora said, and now her voice was softer. I'm not asking for your love right now, Taimin. I'm asking for your time. 1 year. Is that so much to ask from the man who once gave 3 weeks of his life to save a dying child? That hit him hard. She was right. He had risked everything for her once. Could he not give her this? Why me? He asked quietly. Really? Why? Leora looked at him with those violet eyes, and he saw something there that made his heart skip. Because you saw a stranger dying and chose to save her. Because you made me laugh when I had forgotten how. Because you showed me that kindness still exists in the universe. Because every time I thought about the future, you were in it. Is that enough reason? Taimin was silent for a long moment. This was insane. She was an alien princess. He was too old for her. They were from different worlds, literally. But something in him was curious. Who was this woman who had thought about him for 15 years? What had she become? 1 year, he finally said. Leora's face lit up like the sun. 1 year. But I'm not promising anything. At the end, I might still say no. I understand, Leora said, and I will accept your decision, but I won't make it easy for you to say no. Despite himself, Taimin smiled. I believe you. When do we start? Leora asked. Start what? The courtship. When do we start? Taimin looked at her. She was so confident, so sure of herself. Part of him wanted to run away, but another part, a part he didn't quite understand yet, wanted to know more. I suppose we start now, he said. Leora smiled, and Taimin realized he was in serious trouble. This was going to be the strangest year of his life. The message came on a quiet morning, 6 months into the courtship. The Valori Council demanded that Leora return home for the ritual of proving. If she refused, they would dissolve the betrothal pact by force. What is the ritual of proving? Taimin asked, reading the message over Leora's shoulder. A test, Leora said, her voice tight, to see if I've made the right choice. And if they decide you haven't, then the pact is broken and I'll be forced to marry someone they choose. Taimin felt something fierce rise in his chest. That's not happening. Leora looked at him in surprise. You would fight for me? You've spent 6 months fighting for me, Taimin said. I think it's my turn. The journey to Valora took 3 days by jump ship. Taimin spent the time learning everything he could about Valori culture and law. Leora sat with him, teaching him, preparing him. The council will test you, she warned. They'll try to prove you're not worthy. What do I have to do? Pass 3 trials. Mind, heart, and will. If you fail any of them, the pact is broken. And if I pass? Leora smiled. Then they have to accept our union. Valora was the most beautiful place Taemin had ever seen. The entire planet seemed to be made of crystal. Cities grew like gardens, towers of light and color reaching toward twin suns. The air hummed with energy that made his skin tingle. The Valori people were equally beautiful, tall and elegant with skin in every color of the rainbow. They stared at Taemin as Leora led him through the crystal palace. He was the first human many of them had ever seen. The council waited in a great hall made entirely of clear crystal. 7 elder Valori sat on thrones that seemed to grow from the floor. They looked at Taemin with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. So this is the human, the eldest one said. He doesn't look like much. Appearances can be deceiving, Leora said firmly. As you'll soon see. The first trial began the next day. The trial of mind. They brought Taemin to the crystal gardens, vast fields where crystalline plants grew. But something was wrong. The plants were dying, turning gray and crumbling to dust. The Valori depended on these gardens for their long lives. Without them, they would age and die like any other species. Fix this, the council demanded. If you're so brilliant, save our gardens. Taemin spent 2 days studying the gardens. He took samples, ran tests, and consulted with Valori scientists who looked at him with suspicion. Leora stayed by his side, helping when she could. On the 3rd day, Taemin called the council together. I know what's wrong, he said, and you're not going to like it. Speak, the eldest commanded. Your gardens are dying because of genetic bottleneck. The Valori have become so focused on purity, on keeping bloodlines perfect, that you've eliminated all diversity. The same thing is happening to your gardens. Every plant is essentially a clone. When one gets sick, they all get sick. The council members looked shocked. You're suggesting we contaminate our gardens with inferior species. I'm suggesting you save them with diversity, Taemin corrected. Introduce controlled variation. Cross-pollinate with similar crystal-based plants from other worlds. It won't make them weaker. It will make them stronger. This is heresy, one council member hissed, but Leora stood up. It's science. And it's brilliant. We've been so afraid of losing what we are that we've been killing ourselves. My Taemin sees what we refuse to see. The council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed to let Taemin try his solution on one small garden. Within days, the plants began to recover, growing stronger and more vibrant than before. The human passes the trial of mind, the eldest announced reluctantly. The second trial came the next day, the trial of heart. They brought Taemin to a chamber deep in the palace. A crystal sphere waited there, pulsing with soft light. Our people are connected, the eldest explained. We share thoughts and feelings across distances. This sphere will let you experience what we feel. You'll know our loneliness, our grief, our fear. Most aliens can't survive it. Their minds break, and if I refuse, then you fail and the pact is broken. Taemin looked at Leora. She looked terrified for him. You don't have to do this, she said. Yes, I do, Taemin said. He stepped forward and placed his hands on the sphere. The world exploded into feeling. He felt the grief of an entire species dying out. He felt the loneliness of being the last of your kind. He felt centuries of sadness of watching friends die, of knowing your children might be the final generation. It was overwhelming, crushing, too much for any one person to bear. But then he felt something else. In that ocean of sadness, there was a bright point of light, hope, joy, love, and he recognized it immediately. It was Leora. He felt her emotions over the past 15 years, her determination to become worthy of him, her loneliness while she prepared, her joy every time she learned something new about him, her fear that he might reject her, and underneath it all, a deep, powerful love that had never wavered. Tears ran down Taemin's face. He had been so focused on himself, on whether he could love her, that he never truly understood how much she already loved him. When they pulled him from the sphere, he was shaking. But he was smiling. I felt her, he said, looking at Leora. I felt how much you love me. Leora's eyes shimmered with tears. Yes. The human passes the trial of heart, the eldest said quietly. The final trial was the trial of will. They brought Taemin to an arena. A Valori warrior waited there, tall and powerful. covered in crystalline armor. "You must fight," the council said. "Prove you have the will to protect our princess." The fight was brutal. The Valori warrior was faster, stronger, and trained for centuries. Taemin was just a human, middle-aged and out of practice. He was knocked down again and again, but every time he got back up, his ribs cracked. His lips split. Blood ran into his eyes. But he kept standing, kept fighting, kept refusing to give up. "Stay down," the warrior finally said. "You've lost." "No," Taemin gasped, standing on shaking legs. "I haven't. Why do you keep fighting?" "You can't win." "Because she's worth it," Taemin said. "Because I won't give up on her. Because that's what humans do. We fight impossible battles. We face things stronger than us. And we never ever quit." Leora couldn't watch anymore. She ran into the arena, putting herself between Taemin and the warrior. "Enough," she shouted. "You wanted to know if he's worthy? Look at him. He's broken and bleeding, and he's still standing. We Valori are dying because we forgot how to fight. We became too comfortable, too sure of ourselves. Humans survive because they never stop fighting." She turned to the council, her eyes blazing. "You want to know why I love him? Because he shows me what we used to be, what we could be again. He has more will in his human heart than all of us combined." The arena was silent. Then the eldest council member stood. "The human has passed the trial of will," she said. "Not because he won the fight, but because he refused to lose." She looked at Taemin, who was being held up by Leora. "You have passed all 3 trials, human. You have proven your worth. But we must ask you one final question. After everything you've experienced, knowing what you know now about our princess and her love for you, what do you choose?" All eyes turned to Taemin. Leora held her breath. This was the moment that would decide everything. Leora didn't waste any time. The day after their agreement, she showed up at Taemin's research facility wearing a white lab coat over her shimmering dress. She looked completely out of place and absolutely determined. "What are you doing?" Taemin asked when he found her in his laboratory. "Working with you," she said simply. "You spend most of your time here. If I want to court you, I need to be where you are. You can't just walk into a research lab. There are protocols, safety procedures." Leora pulled out a data pad and showed him a screen. "I have all my credentials approved. Your government cleared me this morning. I have doctorates in biology, chemistry, and interspecies medicine from the Valori Academy. I'm qualified." Taemin looked at the credentials. They were real. Of course they were. She had spent 15 years preparing for this. "Fine," he said. "But you follow my rules in this lab." "Of course," Leora said, smiling. That first week was strange. Leora worked beside Taemin, studying his current project on alien cellular regeneration. She didn't just assist. She contributed. Her knowledge of Valori biology gave her insights that Taemin had never considered. "What if the problem isn't the cells themselves?" she suggested one afternoon. "What if it's the energy frequency they need to regenerate?" Taemin stopped what he was doing. "That's actually brilliant. But how would we test that?" "Like this," Leora said. She held out her hand and her palm began to glow softly. "Valori bodies work on specific frequencies. We can demonstrate the principle." They spent the next 3 hours running tests. By the end, they had data that could change the entire field. Taemin looked at Leora with new respect. "You're really smart," he said. "Did you think I wasn't?" she asked, amused. "No, I don't know what I expected." The second week, Leora showed up at his apartment with bags of groceries. Taemin lived alone in a small but comfortable place with a view of the city. He had been planning to order takeout like he did most nights. "What's all this?" he asked. "I'm cooking dinner for you," Leora said, walking past him into his kitchen like she owned it. "You cook," I learned. "For you." She made him a traditional Korean meal. The soup was perfect, the rice was fluffy, and the side dishes were exactly how his mother used to make them. Taemin ate in silence, too surprised to speak. "How did you know these recipes?" he finally asked. "I watched videos. Hundreds of them. I practiced for years." Taemin set down his chopsticks. "You learned to cook Korean food for me?" "I learned to do many things for you," Leora said. "I wanted to understand your culture, your world, everything that made you who you are." Something in Taemin's chest felt tight. "That's a lot of effort for someone you barely remember." "I remember everything," Leora said softly. "The way you smiled at me, the songs you played, the stories you told to help me sleep. I remember feeling safe for the first time since the attack. That's not something you forget. The third week, Leora challenged him to a sparring match. Taemin had practiced martial arts when he was younger, but hadn't trained in years. Leora moved like water, fast and graceful. She could have beaten him easily, but instead she taught him. She showed him new techniques, pushed him to be better. "You're holding back," she said after one round. "You're a princess. I'm not going to hit you. Why not? I can take it." "Hit me," Taemin tried. Leora blocked his punch and swept his legs out from under him. He landed on the mat with a grunt. She offered him her hand, smiling. "Better," she said, "but you need to stop seeing me as something fragile." As the weeks turned into months, Taemin found himself looking forward to seeing Leora. She was funny in unexpected ways. She was brilliant. She challenged him intellectually and emotionally. She made him think about things differently. Hana noticed the change. "You're happier," she said one day. "Am I?" "Yes, you smile more." "You laugh. You seem lighter." Taemin didn't know what to say. Hana looked sad, but she tried to hide it. "She's good for you," Hana said quietly. "I can see that." "I just wish—" "I know," Taemin said. "I'm sorry, don't be. You can't help who you love, but did he love Leora?" Taemin wasn't sure. He liked her. He enjoyed her company, but love? That was something else entirely. Then came the incident. It was late at night, 3 months into the courtship. Taemin and Leora were alone in the lab, finishing an experiment. They didn't notice the saboteur until it was too late. The explosion was small but powerful. It threw Taemin across the room. He hit the wall hard and felt something crack. Through the smoke and pain, he saw a figure moving toward him, not to help, to finish the job. Then Leora was there. Her body changed. The soft, shimmering surface became hard and sharp. She moved faster than Taemin's eyes could follow. The saboteur didn't stand a chance. She disarmed him in seconds, her crystalline hand forming a blade that stopped just short of his throat. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her voice cold and dangerous. The man was terrified. "The Kethrin Dominion. They don't want humans and Valori working together. They said to destroy the lab and make it look like an accident." Security arrived moments later and took the saboteur away. Leora immediately turned to Taemin, her body softening back to normal. She knelt beside him, her face full of worry. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her hands gently checking him for injuries. "Maybe a broken rib," Taemin said, trying to smile. "You saved my life." "Of course I did," Leora said. "You're mine to protect. I saw you fight. You were incredible, scary but incredible." "I'm not just a princess," Leora said quietly. "I'm a warrior. I've trained my whole life. I had to be strong enough to stand beside you, to protect you if needed." Taemin looked at her, really looked at her. This woman had spent 15 years preparing herself for him. She had learned his language, his culture, his work. She had trained to protect him. She had become someone extraordinary, and she had done it all because he once showed her kindness. "Why me?" he asked again, the same question as before, but this time he really wanted to understand. Leora touched his face gently. "Because you saw a dying alien child and chose kindness over safety. Because you made me laugh when I had forgotten how. Because you are the first thing I remember about goodness in the universe. And because, Taemin, you are extraordinary and you don't even know it. I'm just a doctor. You're the man who changed everything for me. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to keep going when my entire species was dying out. Don't you understand? You saved more than my life that day. You saved my soul." Taemin felt something break open in his chest. For 15 years he had lived a half-life, working and achieving but never truly connecting. He had dated but never loved. He had succeeded but never felt complete. Now, looking at Leora's violet eyes, he understood why. Some part of him had been waiting too, waiting without knowing what he was waiting for. "Leora," he said softly. "Yes, I think I'm starting to understand." She smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. "Good," she said. "Because we still have 9 months left, and I have so much more to show you."